everyone for joining us. My name is Madeline Reed. I'm the ILEA Napa-Sonoma president. Really appreciate you all being here today. We are pleased to have Julia Kendrick-Conway and Eric Acuna from the California Association of Private Events with us today. And before we get to that, I do want to share a couple updates. You may have seen that we have a membership promo going on right now. For previous members that are looking to rejoin, we are now offering grants. This is a first come, first serve offer, and we will have it valid through June 30th while supplies last. For returning members, you can also use, when you renew, you can use the code WELCOMEBACK50 to have $50, your $50 application waived, which means if you also apply for our grant, that's a total of $175 of savings. So becoming a member has quite literally never been easier. For new members, we will have grant opportunities available as well. Please contact our VP of Membership, Ken Sipes, at membership@ileanapasonoma.com so you can learn more. You can also learn more about this offer on our Facebook. We have a video up for you guys to watch. Connect, empower, and impact together and join today. We have amazing upcoming programs. In April, we have a panel discussion about vendor impacts to consider for a return to in-person events. We also have a tentative hybrid program based on COVID guidelines that will be a really fun floral workshop with Point West Wholesale Flower Market. In May, we will have an ILEA and NACE multi-chapter collaboration, we will also have a program about the value of our community. So please be sure to check out our website and social media sites for more information and registration. Lastly, before we get to our speakers today, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep your mics on mute to avoid noise while speakers are speaking. We'd love to see you, so if you can, turn your video on. If you see hair, things happen. Use the chat box if you'd like to communicate with or comment to everyone. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. The meeting will be recorded and shared, so please do note that. We are also joined, I just want to say that we're joined by our international president, Dana McCauley. Dana, I'm not sure if you just want to say a quick hello before we kick it over.
Thanks, Madeline, and thanks so much. It's so great to see everybody here today, and we really appreciate Eric and Julia, you sharing with us the latest in updates on advocacy and moving forward towards hybrid and live events that we're so hopeful of in the future. So again, great to see everyone, excited to be here. I'm a past president of ILEA Napa-Sonoma and currently the president of the association. And just as Madeline was talking about membership, if you're a member of ILEA, you're a member of all of ILEA. So it starts here locally and with our sister chapter in Northern California, but there are chapters across the United States, Canada, and around the globe. So it's a wonderful community to be a part of. And again, we're excited to welcome you to Napa-Sonoma and the greater ILEA at large. Back over to you, Madeline.
And back to you, VP of Programs, Samantha Paul.
Good morning, everyone. We're so excited to have you with us today. Thank you for joining. And as you may know, ILEA has partnered with a Live Events Coalition. And so you might have attended our event in September where we brought you LEC and the California Coalition. Today, we're pleased to have Julia and Erica with us from California Association of Private Events, and they've been involved in advocacy efforts for our industry. So before I turn it over to them to share a bit with you, I just wanted to share a little about each of them, and I'm gonna ask for their forgiveness if I mispronounce a name or a business. So first up, we have Julia Kendrick-Conway, who is the owner of Asajari in Mendocino and has extensive background in both the food industry and management. Prior to founding Asajari Mendocino. She headed up sales and events for Delectable Events and Catering in Silicon Valley, the former caterer to the San Francisco 49ers, my favorite football team, and, and spent 20 years as sales executive in the tech industry before returning to food. Julia is a strong advocate of traditional and local food production and is active in a variety of initiatives supporting California's food and wine economy. We also have Eric Acuna, and he's the Vice President of Sales for Friar Tuck's and is experienced event director with a history of working in retail, event planning, business development, sales management, event management, and business growth strategies. Eric is a strong operations professional, successful in partnering with other businesses to create growth and brand awareness. With Julia's advocacy in the food and wine industry, Eric's focus and strength in building partnerships, it's no surprise the two of these have stepped forward to help lead the way for our industry. And it is my pleasure to welcome the two of them. And I'll turn it over to you to take it away.
Thank you so much. We're excited and happy to be here. Thank you for an opportunity to meet with more people. Right now, you know, CAPE is just, I want to give you guys a little more update. You did a great job, everyone, for introducing us. But again, we're the California Association for Private Events, and we're fighting to save the event industry in California. From weddings to galas and other private events, our industry has been forgotten. So we have been fighting for advocacy at the state and local level to ensure that we as individuals and business professionals can continue to work and thrive as we get out of COVID. The organization was made up of board members spread out throughout California, founded by Amy, a wedding planner out of San Diego, who's currently our president. CAPE also has regional task force teams who work at the county level to submit our 16.5-page document outlining guidelines for a safe reopening through each county reopening teams and the county public health officers, who in turn have submitted these to the California Department of Health, which is where our document sits right now. We earlier realized that we needed some opportunity to open doors. We were knocking, we were sending emails, we were showing up in person, and we just weren't getting the reaction that we were hoping to get. At the state level, we really don't have advocacy, and we don't have anyone who really understands our industry. So we early on found out that we needed to hire lobbyists who started to help us open doors, open ears and eyes, and an opportunity to speak to health professionals, health officials, as well as people at the state level and Congress. Now, we currently identify that we are at a place now where we need press and PR. So we're in the process of hiring a firm to get the acknowledgement and the press we need to keep top of mind in our communities, for people to realize we have been forgotten for over a year. To kind of give you a breakdown of where we're at currently, though, the CDPH called a meeting with us and our board back on March 12th. We did have a meeting, and the purpose for that meeting was to gather more, the CDPH wanted to gather more research as to how our industry functions and how it differs from the larger public event space. Because to be honest with you, no one on any of their teams really understands what it is that we do. And we, as a community, collected a group of people and professionals throughout California from just about every sector to really help us put together that 16.5-page document. It also provides an opportunity for our board to emphasize fair and economically viable guidelines. Post-meeting, our board gathered and sent back to the CDPH more specific state and nationwide data, how the industry has operated in other states during the pandemic. In general, we believe that we can begin operating immediately under numbers capacities similar to current restaurant guidelines. So you can say that this is more of a measure stick that we're providing for the CDPH. What the CDPH may come back with is likely outdoor only to begin with. Either way, expect a gradual and a tiered approach. And that was something we were really wanting to work on. We didn't really think that we were going to open our doors and that they were going to say, yes, let's go back to the way things were. But we wanted to create almost like checkpoints so that we can go and we can reopen as we are able to safely, but then that we can also go kind of backwards if we need to. Not that that is where we want to be, but without those little checkpoints to be able to give those type of barometers, there wasn't really an opportunity for them to really listen. So those are the things that we kind of worked on. We are providing the best practices and safety measures, and CAPE has provided the CDPH a combination of the language and recommendations already put forth in the restaurant, place of worship, film, and television guidelines. April 1st has been the set date that we are projected to have some type of release regarding weddings and galas. And we have had a meeting with several assemblies, Senate members, and mayors in the interim and have received overwhelming support. We provided over 250 officials with a template write-up from them to send to our Governor Newsom and his cabinet. We have had an abundance of city and county leaders speak up and participate in our campaign to recognize and include our entire community in the blueprint for a safer reopening. We are currently working on a deal with the CDPH that would allow us to review the official guidelines prior to release. What really fielded us was back in October, airlines opened up with the middle seat on a plane where people are able to travel and take off their masks to eat or drink, from flights anywhere from 45 minutes to 6 hours. And how is that any different than people coming together sitting at a table who may actually be able to sit 6 feet apart? We also are the only state without any guidelines at the state level for private events. This is a problem, and CAPE is here to make a change now. CAPE was founded during COVID. However, we plan to keep fighting for a seat at the table at the state level to be recognized for additional pressing matters like AB5. Our industry is filled with some of the most talented people in the world, and we deserve to be represented. And in a nutshell, that's basically where we are with CAPE, the state, and how we plan to continue to move forward, not just for COVID and reopening, but also advocacy across our entire community moving forward. And so that's our state broad. Julia, I'd love for you to talk more about our local level.
Great, thanks, Eric, and appreciate all the updates. I know I caught some of that yesterday on the Clubhouse talk, and it's such a moving target. For any of you interested in being involved in advocacy, it means you have to have your finger on pulses all over the place, following various social media channels, listening to your legislators, board of supervisors, online meetings, all of that sort of stuff. And in order for CAPE to do that effectively across a state that has 58 counties, we have to have regional leadership and regional task forces. And so in most of our major markets, when we first organized, we sat down and looked at what markets had the most visibility in our industry and the largest markets for not just, venue-based weddings as you see in the urban areas, but for also those of us out in the hinterlands, the destination markets. And so we identified key market areas. We have representation from most of those markets. We are noticeably missing a representative for Sonoma County. So I'm going to put a pitch out there. If anyone's interested in getting involved in advocacy, I'm sort of doing double duty right now with Mendocino and Sonoma counties, as Samantha knows. And we do have someone from the Treposti group representing Napa County. And so what a regional representative or a regional leader does is provide themselves as a liaison between the local task groups. I know we have one in Mendocino County. We meet via Zoom every other week for an hour to an hour and a half, reviewing what's going on, the current state of affairs, any information people get on other industries about best practices and reopening. We share the information from CAPE back down to our membership, and they share the particular challenges that they're experiencing in their market. Perfect example. One of the things that we saw a lot of last summer and fall in Mendocino counties, and I believe in Sonoma County as well, are the extra legal events, which were the people that would rent some vineyard property as an Airbnb, and because they didn't want to deal with masks and distancing, would have the size event they wanted somewhere, out in the vineyards. And that was something that we as an organization felt was potentially damaging for all of our livelihoods, because everyone's seen the news about the Maine super spreader event. I have a colleague in Maine who is the head of their task group, and that was one event. It happened at a non-licensed venue with no venue representative on site, no one taking charge of compliance to the state guidelines, and no contact tracing, no testing, nothing involved in trying to mitigate the risk. And one person attended that event who was positive, carrying coronavirus, and they infected another person who happened to work 2 jobs. He was a security guard at both a local jail, minimum security jail facility, and also at a local rest home. And so as a result, from one event, there were over 200 infections that resulted just from basically 2 people connecting with each other. And so, everybody hears about that. Maine has held over the season hundreds of weddings with no challenges at all, but yet this one event is what keeps coming up in the press. So it's very important to monitor and to try to control the extra legal events, and we can only do that at the local level. The state of California is very good at giving out unfunded mandates, as we've known with the cottage food law and a lot of the others. And our states and counties right now don't have the financial nor the manpower resources to do the enforcement. So we as an industry have to self-police. And so part of what we do as a task group is to continue to monitor that, to work with each other, to try to provide support to each other, make resources for financial support and everything available where we can, so that people don't have to do these events merely to pay their rent and keep food on the table for their kids. I don't know about in Eric's region, but I know in our region, the majority of the business owners are either sole proprietors or simple partnerships. And it's, we don't have the financial resources of credit lines or shareholders and areas where people can bankroll us through a period of time. Most of our wedding providers in Mendocino County, due to the seasonal nature of our business, have been shut down since the end of the 2019 season, when the rains came in November. And so haven't seen any significant billings in over a year. And I have to say, I got off my task group meeting last night, and keeping particularly my venue partners in line is like herding cats, because they're at their end of their ropes financially. So it's really important to work this on a local level, both to hold the industry together in a cohesive fashion, so that the state can recognize the professionalism inherent in our industry, to see us as a unit instead of just a bunch of scattered individuals, and to pass information up and down the chain, again, to share the best practices, and to work with our local governments and local legislatures, because the state system right now, the California Department of Public Health, and each county has its own health officer, some municipalities do, they are completely separate from the legislature. So for instance, your board of supervisors, they, quote, employ your public health officer, but their authority is only that of a dotted line. The public health officer reports to the state department, California Department of Public Health, and the health officer for the entire state. And so, they are not necessarily accountable in the same way that other state officials are under the current system. So it's very important at your local level to stay involved with your board of supervisors, because they are the people, along with your state senators and your state assembly people, who understand the economic side of the equation. They know, they need to hear about how our businesses are suffering, and how people who are their constituents are challenged by the lack of guidelines and the lack of support for our industry. The public health officers are doctors. They're interested in one thing: life and death, keeping people safe. And so they have to be approached in a completely different manner in terms of what we can do as an industry to ensure that COVID is not spread as a result of the gatherings that we put on, that we manage, that we are a part of. And we're in a unique position. As a caterer, we're already good at protecting our guests and our fellow vendors' health. We protect the food supply, we control the alcohol, we control the safety on site. And so, the state needs to be educated as to how capable we actually are of finding those potential infection points and controlling and mitigating them. I mean, one of the things, and Eric will understand this as well. We've talked about it quite a bit in our CAPE meetings, is that, we're the only industry with the private events industry that has closed guest lists. We know who's going to be at the event and, and have the ability to do contact tracing where public events do not. And one of the frustrations we've had in Mendocino County is under the winery tasting room permitting. They're allowed to have wine tasting with food. And we have a couple of wineries that run happy hour events. So they have 75 to 100 people randomly arriving on Friday nights from different cohorts, different households. They sit, yes, at individual tables and pods that are 6 feet apart, but they listen to music, they have entertainment, they have food for sale. And these people are sitting there for 4 to 5 hours, effectively the same as they would be at any one of our receptions. And that's legal in the state of California, and what we do is not. And so, our job is to bring the attention of the discrepancies to our local governments so that they can transfer that information upward to the state, and in turn provide that information as well to the organizations like CAPE, like NACE, like ILEA, like CEC, so that it can be shared and disseminated from an industry perspective as well. Because as we've seen with the restaurant industry, only if we present a professional and unified front can we be successful in getting their attention. My work with NACE and their national advocacy efforts, we have one state, which will go unnamed, where the coalition broke down. We had one group that just decided they didn't want to play with everyone else. And as a result, the entire advocacy effort got kicked out of the meetings that they were talking to the state. And they have just now managed to come back together enough to get back to the table and continue to negotiate guidelines. And so, for me, the reminder that I always share with my team is that, we may be in different boats, we're in the same storm. And also that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we need to support each other and work together and try to do as best we can not to participate in that gray area. Again, I can't tell another business owner how to run their business, but I can just say that the potential repercussions for all of us are more severe when we can't hold together. So that's what I have to say about it. Again, we're looking for someone for Sonoma County to represent us at CAPE. We welcome feedback and questions, and I think Eric is available as well for questions. So that's pretty much where we are today, and keeping our fingers crossed for April 1st. And believe me, the joke of April Fool's Day is not lost on me, but and I just got an alert on my phone that told me the governor is going live, but I don't know what he's saying. So I'm just going to have to wait and see after this call.
Well, thank you both. If you have anything else to add, we can do that. Otherwise, we will open it up to questions. The group probably has some burning questions for you.
I'm ready for questions.
I'm ready.
If anybody has a question, you can either drop it into chat and I'll ask it on your behalf, or you can feel free to unmute. We'll try not to overlap each other, but you can feel free to unmute and ask a question if you have one. No one?
Oh, I'll go. Thank you guys so much for your insight and for advocating for private events. I'm just curious, so I didn't realize that we were the only state that didn't have any sort of guidelines around private events. Have you guys, when we talked to government, were we able to kind of look at what other states are doing, what they're doing well, and kind of come back with some sort of feedback and I guess data just to say like this is possible and it's worked well?
Absolutely.
We have definitely, as everyone knows, it's a lot of political moves. It's, who's going to try to be in a position next year or who's up this year. And so California has been just extremely, extremely conservative from every other state. And we have, I don't know if anyone here on this call realized, but Ohio opened to 250 people weddings back in April of last year. There's just so many states that really opened up, and then they kind of went backwards and then opened up and backwards, and they've done some yo-yo things, whereas California just hasn't really opened up. And so we have definitely used a lot of the other states as barometers or as an ability to say, hey, this is what's happening there. Seems like it's working. And California in the beginning really wasn't open to hearing what other states were doing. They worry about California and what we are and who we are. And so over time with our lobbyists, which, to let you know, a lobbyist is very expensive. It's $20,000 just to get started with the lobbyist, and then it's additional funds to continue to make that happen. And that just was us coming together as an organization to say, we really need to fight for our industry. We really need to have a voice, and we need a seat at the table. That is definitely something we need moving forward, even after COVID, because no one at our legislative level really understands our industry. So to answer your question, yes, we definitely used other states. We used other guidelines, and it wasn't until our lobbyists really opened up enough doors that we were able to really make a splash and for them to start opening up an opportunity and a conversation. So that's kind of where we're at. Our 16.5-page document started at 10 pages back in May of last year. And since then, we've learned from other states, we've learned from our own industry on how we can really bring it together. And we really brought people from every neck of the woods. I mean, you name it. We had an officiant look at it. We've had a DJ look at it. We've had a florist. We've had everybody. And now we're up to 16.5 pages. And that's really going to hopefully be the barometer and the opportunity for them to see that we can do this safely. But again, we're not going to open with dance floors and make it, this big event. When we say we want us to go back to work, I really have to emphasize, and I know Julia feels the same, that we are not saying to open up to go back to the way it was immediately. It's going to take time.
Yeah, it will be a phased approach. And I know there's a lot of you asking about specific details. And unfortunately, because the state has taken input from the various organizations and is trying to draft these guidelines, they have not yet sat down and shared the detail of those guidelines with any of us. It's a work in process. Again, as Eric mentioned, we're working toward trying to get a chance to look at them on a line by line basis. I think my own assessment is that there is probably going to be some headcount restrictions early on. It will be definitely integrated into the tier system. For instance, if you look at the guidance that was released last Friday about live performances and live sporting events, there are no, and they're currently outside only in the purple and red tier, and there are no live audiences allowed in the purple or the red tier. So, that sort of gives you an indication from a sideways slant as the direction the state is going. On the other hand, we're cautiously optimistic because, again, they are very focused on the economic viability of the guidelines because they know they've done wrong by us to date, and that the current situation is just not sustainable. I know that we've done some surveys, as well as CEC having done some surveys about the number of businesses that just will not be there in our marketplace if this goes on beyond this summer. And so they are cognizant of that need. And I would say the 50-person number, and again, this is just a guess, might be a starting point. I do suspect also that indoor is not going to be on the table till you're in orange or yellow, and that outdoor will be preferred under all circumstances. It is highly likely, from the feedback we've been getting from the national efforts from NACE, that dancing is not going to be allowed initially, but they are open to the idea of people in a designated space dancing as a table pod, just as long as they're not mingling. Because what the state is the most worried about is the cross-pollination and mingling of what they call unrelated cohorts, which means people who have come from all over the nation and all over the world and are coming together and are going to spend 4 to 6 hours together, possibly without masks and without distancing, and with the addition of alcohol. So they, again, as doctors, they're always going to go to that worst case scenario. And so, again, we have to demonstrate that we're willing to look at mitigations. I know with my own clients, I'm having conversations around, facial coverings can be kind of a fun favor item. They can have them imprinted with the couple's, hashtag, or with something special about the event. I'll be teaching a session at CaterSource in Miami about enrolling the clients in the planning process to be a part of the mitigation, rather than it being a situation where we're handing them a list of rules and telling them this is what you're going to have to do or you can't have the event. I mean, I think all of us are creative enough from the selling standpoint to know that the best way to get this stuff done is to make it fun for our clients. And so, other states have done things like wristbands in colors based on vaccination status or on testing, that if you have a green wristband, you're open to being hugged. If you have a yellow wristband, maybe not. If you have a red wristband, don't get within closer than 6 feet to me. And so there's a lot of ways where we can get creative and weave these guidelines into the fabric of the events in such a way, and pitch it to our clients that we're keeping them and their families and their friends safe. And so it's, I know it's easy to focus on the details, and on the April 1st, April 2nd release, we've sort of been generally promised guidance, and it's a very broad term, and timelines. And so, they are cognizant of the fact that our industry does not operate like restaurants. We can't flip a switch and be open.
Oh,
We
absolutely.
30, 60, 90 days or more in order to take an event that was in pause mode and get it produced and get it out there. And so they are cognizant that we need to be able to go to our clients and give them somewhat of a forward look about the summer and about the fall, and rather than this uncertainty, because I know from my standpoint with my clients, the uncertainty is what's getting to everybody. It's like sitting on a hill of ants, because they wake up at 2 a.m. and it's like, oh my God, what if I can't have my wedding at all? And so, we've been very effective in communicating that position to the state, and I think they're finally listening. So.
Thank you for that. And I know that you've touched on, obviously what we're anticipating for that 4/1 date, and there's no real known there. Have you shared, or are you able to share with our group the document that you guys presented that gives us some idea of what the guide you've given the state?
Eric, I'll toss that one to you.
We can, it's actually part of our membership. Like anytime you're part of the membership of CAPE, you're going to be getting everything from that 16.5-page document all the way to, I know that at the very last year, we had, for some of us business professionals, and we've had the opportunity to take advantage of some of the government assistance. And so at one point, there were 2 options. You could do A or B. And then at one of our CAPE meetings that we have with all of our leaders and our regional task force, someone identified that there was an opportunity to now take advantage of both. And so that was something that CAPE is really interested in doing, and we have been doing, which is anyone who's part of a member, we give you all of the tools necessary, any updates, there's newsletters. We want to make sure that for businesses that need the government support, we're going to give you the information you need to be able to take advantage of that stuff. And in real time, I remember it was something that had just come out on a Monday morning at 9 a.m. and we had our Monday call that day at 3:30, and I already got the information. I was then able to pass that information to my president, and he was able to look into it. And sure enough, we were able to take advantage of some additional support that he said, as of last year, that wasn't something we could do. I'll look into it. And so that's the power of CAPE, is we want to continue to not only provide advocacy, but information, power to be able to protect your business, to protect your employees, to protect your clients. And so to answer your question, yes, we do have that for our members. Anyone who becomes a member does get access to all of the resources that we have. And that's part of what we are looking for. And our membership is important to us because that's what's going to continue to help us with the lobbyists. It's what's going to help us with the publicists and the PR people. It costs a lot of money to run those things. And so for people who want to become a member, that would be amazing to help with that support, as well as there's always the opportunity to just give a one-time donation or a two-time donation on our website. Everything's there, and it is a tax write-off, so it is something that you can use to be able to not just provide money, but to also, take an advantage back as well.
CAPE is a California certified 501c6 trade support organization. So your donation is tax deductible, and very, very low cost of general membership. Our 1 year is $100. And so I put the website up in the chat. You can go there. There's a button you can click on to join. There's a button you can click on if you just want to get our newsletter and follow along, get on our mailing list. There's also a button to donate if you see fit. And I mean, we've had members donate, business members donate that decide to underwrite a particular initiative or a particular effort. So we have someone that donates and says, I want my money to go to the lobbyist, or someone who donates and said, I'm willing to pay for your Zoom subscription so we can continue to have town halls. And, we're real flexible about how you can participate and how you can help. We even take volunteers to help with some of the clerical aspects of what we're doing, like managing the correspondence back and forth with the state legislature. We took HubSpot and did a general mailing to the state legislature, and the next day, Amy's email box was full of about 600 emails. So we all, jumped in and took a chunk of it and tried to respond and set up meetings and that sort of thing. So as there is with CEC, there's always a lot of different opportunities depending on how you can help and how much time you have to help contribute. And it's, you can choose, because I know, we're all in a position where our business is starting to maybe start breathing again. So, you have to decide what you can do and what you can't do. And we try to make it as accessible as possible. And we have membership levels all the way from the individual level, all the way up to corporate memberships that larger organizations can do as well. And 100% of our money that we take in goes toward advocacy. We aim to split it between the lobbying and statewide efforts and the local efforts. Currently, we're barely pulling together enough to keep up the statewide efforts, but eventually there will also be support monies that can come back down to work that's being done on the local and the regional level.
Thank you. And I know you did touch on guest counts and dance floors and things like that. And obviously you may not have an idea, and you did mention that it's going to be by tiers, but we did get the question in chat as far as, the capacity counts. Is there anything else you can shed light on that particular area?
So what I can say is that we are, like Julia mentioned, everything is geared around the tier system. So as it could be capacity limits, it could also be percentage of capacity limits. It may not just be, and what we've typically seen is it's less, whichever one is less. It's either 25% or 50 people. Those types of things it's been pretty common for different things. So we have spoken to them, and when I say them, all the different health organizations and things like that, and they haven't given us a real hard number, but 50 seems to be a safe number that we keep hearing is more highly
point. Yeah,
right. It's kind of more of a starting point right now. Technically, weddings are legal. When I say weddings, I mean that means actual ceremonies are legal, but that doesn't mean receptions are technically legal. And within our industry, there are some professionals who have decided, and this is not Kate suggesting you do this, but this is just our observation, which is that some industry professionals have shifted their license to a restaurant license, and now they're operating under restaurant guidelines. And that has given them the opportunity to continue on with receptions and things like that. But again, under restaurant guidelines, there's no dance floors, there's no photo booths, there's none of that stuff. It is really just a fine dining experience that you would get at a restaurant. But obviously it's everyone the bride and groom know, or groom or bride or bride, they know, the couple knows all of the members. As Julie had mentioned, we actually know who attends and who doesn't, and it's easy to follow up. So that is kind of where we're at in terms of legality and what people are doing right now based off the county. We meet with a lot of the health departments pretty weekly. And so it was just brought to our attention that this is an update that we have, not necessarily for your county, but for another county. LA County has been on a much tighter restriction than the state mandated. And Los Angeles actually told us that there's a potential they may actually move to the orange tier, which is pretty amazing for that county that's been hit really hard and kind of has been the toughest. So for them to loosen up their range really makes me hopeful that there's going to be some opportunities in all the other counties that have done such a better job, maybe, or have had more of a positive outlook on the number of people being sick and positive and deaths and things like that. So I can tell you that the counties we are speaking to them on a weekly basis. We get updates every week, and that's part of the whole CAPE thing, is that we want to make sure that you guys get that information sooner rather than later, so that, as Julie had mentioned, you can't just flip a switch and all of a sudden we're going to have an event this Saturday. I mean, we can, but it's difficult and it's not really ideal. But in order for us to safely open up, we have to have planning and we need time. And so that's what we really want to make sure, is that you guys, our entire community knows what's happening when it happens, and that there's time to react and to prepare.
Also, I'd like to add just a snapshot in time. The current guidance, as Eric said, for weddings is specified outdoor. It's under the religious and cultural ceremonies exemption, which is constitutionally guaranteed. Outdoor capacity is not limited, based on distancing and masking. And indoor capacity is generally expressed as a percentage, and we anticipate that'll continue to be expressed as a percentage of capacity. Now, mind you, this is what others have found in other states. This is not a capacity as you define it as a venue owner. This is the capacity that the fire marshal has. And so that's the place to go when you want to know what the hard line capacity of your indoor space is. California also considers any tenting an indoor space unless you have what they call contiguous walls. So your tent can have walls on this side and this side, or on that side and that side, but it can't have two walls that are joined together. And that would be considered outdoor. That's considered a canopy, similar to what the restaurants are seeing. And so it's important to really assess that aspect of it, because whatever guidance they release is going to be based on that sort of definitions for it. Now, currently, their wedding guidance also expressly forbids any food or beverage service in conjunction with the ceremony. I know some of our couples in Mendocino County that have done takeaway box events and then a family dinner that fits into the 12 people, 3 cohabitant household gathering guideline, have waited until 2 hours after the ceremony in order to do it, so that it was not considered part of the ceremony itself. And so it's really convoluted. When the state writes guidance, they write it over the top of what they've already done rather than substituting it. And so it can be incredibly confusing to figure out what applies and what doesn't. And so, this is why we're pressing for standardized guidance that fits into the tier system, so that it's measurable for all of us, as well as for the people that are enforcing it, so that people have the same expectation of what they can do and what they cannot do. And it was real disheartening, because the state sort of snuck that no food and beverage provision into the wedding and the cultural ceremonies and religious guidelines back in the end of December during the surge portion of it, and didn't say anything to anyone about it. And all of a sudden somebody noticed it was there, and it's like, well, isn't that fun? And and I don't think they're purposely trying to make life difficult for us. It's just there are so many people working on different aspects of this guidance. This is something they've never done before. And so oftentimes the right hand isn't telling the left hand. And so if you really dig into it, as many of us have had to do that are in advocacy, you'll find there's a lot of contradiction. So it's always important to ask for clarification rather than to assume. So yes, there is still a max capacity of 12 with 3 cohabitant households, and each county interprets that in their own way as to whether it's inclusive of staff. My county interprets it as inclusive of staff. And so, that means there's 2 households plus my chef who's cooking for them. So we've limited ourselves basically to drop-offs to try to work within that. And it's very challenging because your Airbnb and your VRBO and your Vacasa and all these vacation rental companies are not communicating this guidance to the people that are renting from them. So people may put their money down, say they're having a family reunion, rent 2 houses next to each other on the coast, and call me up and say, we want a chef to come cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for us because it's safer than going to restaurants. And I have to tell them that because they're 25 people from multiple households, we can't do it. And they, this is a surprise to them because this is not being communicated to them through the lodging partners. So it's really important at the local and regional level to make sure that you collaborate with your tourism agencies, with your destination marketing organizations, and with your lodging associations, because again, we're only going to succeed if we work in this together. If we're at cross purposes with each other, then we won't have a good result.
And to kind of dovetail onto that with Julia, as we start to reopen, it's just going to get more and more confusing. It's going to say we're going to go here in this county, there in that county. Counties have the ability to kind of make things a little more strict or not. And like I mentioned with LA, they're choosing not to. They want to go with the state, but it is going to be very confusing. So we as a community just need to come together and to really educate each other with the information that we have. And we just really have to work with our health departments and, with the state. And that's what we're looking to do. So as we continue to open up, we invite you guys to be part of our network and our family of industry professionals, because we want to make sure that it is safe and that people are doing the right things and that they protect their businesses, because that's number one.
Thank you for whoever put up the actual guidelines there. Appreciate that. And I did get confirmation late Tuesday from the county health department and our health officer in Mendocino County that he will follow the state guidance. And again, like LA County previously, he's held us to guidance that was much stricter than the state guidance. So, it's encouraging that there's conversations among these health officers that they're willing to accede to going along with the state guidance rather than going on their own, because they're finally recognizing the economic impact of leakage. And I want to talk a little bit about that just in the context of the national advocacy that we're doing with NACE. And it has to do with the fact that we're trying to establish at least some baseline guidance that's common from state to state. And if we're able to do that, that will reduce that business leakage. I don't know if any of you have colleagues in Lake Tahoe, but right now they have a terrible problem because Nevada is wide open. And so couples can cancel their event outright in California, drive across the border, do what they want to do in Nevada, and then come right back into California, bringing the virus with them. Same thing happens, in Georgia versus Carolinas, or Florida versus surrounding states. And it's something that we're dealing with nationwide to try to, not only preserve our business in our communities, in our states. And of course, the tourism people are very big on this in California, but, to prevent the interstate spread of COVID from areas that are less restrictive. Because if, my 150 person wedding decides they're all going to fly to Texas because they can do whatever they want and not wear masks and not distance, and they all come back and they bring the virus back into their communities with them. And the state's biggest concern right now is the new variants that are emerging and the resistance to vaccination and to testing. And so one of the things that in my region we're doing at the local level is continuing to support surveillance testing and continuing to support the vaccination efforts. We've gotten some indications that testing, on-site testing and vaccination status could have a bearing on guest lists and what levels of restrictions there will be. This may not be in the initial guidance, but it is the path down the road. And so, it's important to continue to support your surveillance testing resources in your counties, because if they aren't utilized, they'll go away. And I'm envious of our friends down in Southern California, because there's a lot of private companies right now that have set up to do testing. We have less of that in Northern California because of the rural nature of our counties. And so, again, it's really important to partner on these resources and to make sure that we all have a level playing field so we can stay in business.
So true. And there's a lot of work being done. I know from the hospitality side of things to, make sure our hospitality folks can get vaccinated and that they are a priority in that. To your point of Governor Newsom going live, I see that it's a lot about when vaccines are going to become available to different age groups. But I know, there's a lot of work around the wine industry, and so making sure that that trickles down along into other parts of the hospitality industry. So
yeah,
certainly a lot of work being done there.
In Mendocino County, our Board of Supervisors ruled that all of the workers in our hospitality sector, be it maids or anybody else, was considered a frontline worker. And so they held industry specific vaccination events and got the majority of the staff of our lodging properties vaccinated. Winery folks can get vaccinated under the agricultural provision. So you're also in 1A, 1B, as are any one who is related to food service in any way. And that includes people who deliver breakfast to rooms at B&Bs, that sort of thing. So there are opportunities, and obviously the state is moving toward more general vaccine guidelines, but it's still going to be supply limited. So I would recommend, if anybody has the opportunity to do so, do it. And we've had, I don't know if any of you have had this, I'll put it out to the group, but I'm starting to hear back from other caterers, other planners, that particularly in corporate arenas, that certain venues, certain organizations, certain couples are talking about requiring vaccination for all of their guests, as well as for the companies that are serving their event. A colleague of mine in New York City has been told by a corporate client that they don't want any staff at their events that hasn't been vaccinated. And so again, all this is new law being made as we're living it and breathing it. And that, along with the liability issue, is something that we're going to also need to look at dealing with after we get reopened. So it's just really important to try to, take it from the perspective of providing a safe working environment for all of us and our teams, as well as for the hosts and their guests.
Thank you both. I don't see any additional questions in chat, but if anybody else has any last questions, feel free to unmute or drop in chat. I'm also going to add, if you wanted to reach out to Julia or Eric direct, and just drop their information in the chat, whether they like it or not.
That's okay.
Welcome here. 21
Always
years
welcome.
in the industry, and I welcome anything. It could be related to this, it could be related to other things. I can tell you that I appreciate ILEA. I appreciate these organizations that come together to really, be a beacon and a voice and information and education for our industry professionals. I know that I've been the co-director of ABC chapters. I'm on the WIPA board now. I mean, I'm here for whatever I can do to support our community.
And CAPE is working very hard to work with their partner organizations, with NACE, with ILEA, with WIPA. And, because again, we all need to move together as an industry. That's how restaurants got reopened. They had, not just because they have a lobbyist, but because they're cohesive as an industry. And so if there's a silver lining in any of this for us, it's that all of these organizations are stepping up to partner and to work together and to add credence and credibility to our industry going forward, which means the next thing that happens, we're going to have a bigger voice. And I just want to applaud all of you that have been willing to be a part of this, and look forward to when we can all see each other at an event again. So.
Well, thank you both very much for joining us today. I know that obviously with the work that you've been doing, and then of course the questions we're going to have for you, it's kind of an interesting time to be fielding these questions. So we truly appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate all the work that you are doing on behalf of our industry. Shout out to Brooke, who volunteered to rep Sonoma County.
I'll be in touch, Brooke.
And so again, just a big thank you for your tireless efforts. I did drop your contact information. If anybody else wants to drop their contact information in chat, we welcome that, since you can save the chat and save each other's contact info. And if there weren't any other questions, we were going to end today with a little bit of fun networking for anybody